good morning, and a glorious and wonderful morning it is. I want to jump into Hebrews chapter 12 this morning and verse 18, where he says, "You have not come to a mountain that can be touched and that burned with fire, and to blackness and darkness and storm, and to the sound of a trumpet, and to a voice speaking words, so that those who heard them begged that the word not be spoken to them any more. For they could not endure that which was commanded. If so much as a beast touches the mountain, it must be stoned or thrust through with the spear. So terrible was the sight that Moses said, I am afraid and trembling." That was Mount Sinai. He's saying, you have not come to that mountain. Now, naturally, of course, you haven't, right? I wasn't there. You weren't there with the presence of God hitting the mountain and things getting burnt in the rumble, rumble, rumble. We weren't there. But in the spiritual aspect, you have not come to the mountain where the law was given, where the law that must be carried about through the weakness of men's flesh was the a righteous but the only way, a a weak way, I guess, in a sense you could say, to enact and to enforce the will of God, right? You have not come to this mountain, but in verse 22, you have come to Mount Zion. Yeah, I've heard about Zionism and being a Zionist and stuff. And when I was younger, I thought Zionism was some weird sect. I remember hearing Bob Marley sing about Zion and stuff like that. And then later on, I've hear it more used almost like an insult. Like, are you a Zionist? Meaning people believe that the Jews would return to their homeland, to the land that God promised Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, to Israel. But he says, you have come to Mount Zion. So I guess I am a Zionist. I have already come there according to this word. In fact, it implies that it's a place that I reside, it's a place that I belong. Zion. Not talking about a physical place that you call Zion, but Mount Zion, too, he clarifies, the city of the living God, the heavenly Jerusalem, and to an innumerable company of angels, to the general assembly and church of the firstborn who are enrolled in heaven, to God. You have come to God, the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous ones made perfect, and to Jesus, the mediator of a new covenant, and to the sprinkled blood that speaks better than that of Abel. You have already come there. You know, when you think about your life in heaven, oftentimes, at least I'll say when I think about it, my mind likes to get in this little set where it's like you've got this earth, you know, like the Little Prince. If you ever watched the Little Prince way, way, way back, they had a planet that was really tiny and he could kind of walk around it. Well, you've got this little planet, and then you've got the banister, the clouds up in heaven, way off there. And they're in heaven looking over saying, well, when will you ever show up? It's going to be a long time. We're watching you. Well, there is an aspect of they are watching because they are not on earth operating. But there's another aspect that we are already there. We need to recognize that heaven is not this distant by and by. He didn't say you will come to Mount Zion after you've left this life. When these weary days are over, you'll fly away. He didn't say you will come to the city of the living God. He didn't say you will come to God, to the judge of all, and to the spirits of the righteous ones made perfect. It says you have. You have. The angels, you're with the angels. You're with the spirits. You have some aspect, whether it's, you know, just a spiritual thing, or there's, I don't know, duplicity. You know, they talk about quantum theory and, you know, things being in multiple places at once. That can get pretty theoretical, you know, thought related. But the reality is that's what he said. That's what God inspired him to say. You have come. So you have come to Mount Zion. You don't need to cry out and say, oh God, if only I could split the heavens and you could hear my voice. Oh, if only we could have angels around us. Well, you have come to an innumerable company of angels. And then he finishes it. I'm going to jump over to verse 25 again. See then that you do not refuse him who is speaking. I like that passage. He says you're already there, but this is almost a lead up to a warning. He says you're there. You're with God. It's a greater thing than Mount Sinai. It's a greater thing than that burnt mountain. You're with him. So don't refuse him who is speaking, not who has spoken, not just who has inspired people and then they got together and they bound it in this, well, it's a beat up old book now, but they bound up in this nice thing with a gold trim just to show that it's holy. Not just who has spoken, but see that you don't refuse him who is speaking. God is alive and he is speaking, and he's not far from each one of us. Amen. Be blessed.